Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to this week's Learn with Lorna. You'll see that I'm probably looking slightly different. I'm only going out on one channel. That's because we have had a network issue that means I'm only on the one channel and I'm using my home tablet. So if someone could let me know that they can see me and that it's coming through, that would be absolutely wonderful. So welcome, as I say, to this week's Learn with Lorna. Anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Lorna. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for the Highland Archive Service. We have 4 archive centres in the Highlands. We have the Highland Archive and Registration Centre in Inverness. We have Nucleus, the Nuclear and Caithness Archives in Wick, Loch Aber Archive Centre in Fort William, and Skye and Loch Alsh Archive Centre in Portree. That's lovely, everyone. Thank you for saying that you can all see me and hear me. It's very much appreciated. These things can throw you off a little bit in the morning when they happen. A reminder that this series is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland and there's no payment or subscription required to take part in this series of talks. But if you're able to donate towards our work, and I know that many of you have done so in the past and we're very, very grateful for that, so thank you. Thank you for your comments on last week's talk on the old High Church in Inverness. It's a beautiful building with a very interesting history, and it was really nice to see your comments and also to see that the Friends of the Old High Church had shared that film as well, which was lovely. And that's a reminder, if you think that there's someone else that you know or a group that you're a member of that might be interested in these, please do share the talks. It's really, really nice for me and for the wider service to know that our collections are being learned about all over the place and being appreciated. So throughout December we're going to carry on by looking at subjects that are not specifically related to Christmas but that have a connection. So last week we looked at attending church, and this week we're going to look at the subject of shops and shopping. We have loads of different business collections across our 4 archive centres, and they can reveal a huge amount about shops, about shopping, the sort of things people were buying at different times, the price of different goods over the years. And of course, as well as those specific business collections, information can be found in all sorts of other collections, such as family papers, through receipts, through letters, and so on. And it's one of the things I often say when I'm talking about lots of different subjects. Think about the sort of thing you keep. You know, if you've bought something, you keep a receipt for it to prove that you've bought it, or in case you need to query it, or things like that. Those are the sorts of things that we keep, but they're still the sorts of things that people kept in the past. So we're going to start by looking at some general references, including where you can look if you're interested in finding out about the history of a particular shop, and then focus a little more on some of our business-specific collections. So evidence of shops can be found in lots of different places, and those in recent memory often appear in our oral history recording collections. So as an archive service, and also the team at Ambala, who I have mentioned before, our Highland Culture and History website, will make recordings of people to talk about their life, to talk about their experiences of living or working or growing up in the Highlands. And one of the things that often comes up in these is memories of shops, particularly sweetie shops, local bakers. I am sure that the people watching, you will have fond memories of a local shop. If you do, please share them, because even if no one else remembers the shop, they'll have a similar memory, I'm sure. Our Highland History and Culture website, Ambala, that I mentioned, also has loads of pictures of different shops, hundreds and hundreds of different pictures. Pictures from the 1870s right through to the 2010s. So there are pictures, for instance, of the Inverness Victorian Market in 1870, and if anyone has come over from another page, because I'm only on the Hark page today, then they will have seen that I posted a picture of the Victorian Market in the 1870s on the other pages today. The market was famously destroyed by fire in 1889 before being rebuilt 2 years later at a cost of about £7,000. But those pictures that are on Ambala from those early years before the fire are really atmospheric, and they show that the Victorian market was for a long time a traditional market like Covent Garden or any other. There were no permanent stands. The town council rented trestle tables out at 6pence a day, and people would travel to attend the market, but also to sell at the market. And they would sell everything apparently from piglets to cheese. Now, as I say, the Victorian market was rebuilt after the fire, and it is still operational and much loved. But the shops are now all separately run, but they still sit under that one roof. So there's early pictures on Ambala. There are also pictures, for instance, from the 1950s. So there's pictures of the 1950s of Strathpeffer looking very bustling, and you can see all the names of the shops in the background: wool shops, stationers, chemists, and so on. Ambala also has pictures of shops that still exist. So for instance, there's a 1930 picture of Burnett and Forbes drapers, which still exists on the same site in there, or another one of Duncan Fraser Butchers, which still exists in Inverness from the 1930s. So you get a sense of that continuity of some businesses as well. And as I mentioned, Ambala also has pictures of shops from the 2000s and the 2010s. And again, a really important reminder of something that I bang on about a lot. I don't know if I have excessively in this series of talks, but a reminder that our role as archives involves not just looking after the past, but recording the present for the future when it will be the past. And so that's something that we try to do as well, which is capture what's happening just now so that in the future we'll have a record of it. Now, whenever we share any of these images of shops on our social media channels, they're incredibly popular because shops bring back memories. People talk about buying dresses, going to a school dance, buying sweets, weekend treats, going to the baker's, visiting their gran and dropping in at the butcher's, all that sort of thing. Shops have a real ability to fire people's imaginations and their memories, particularly, I'm sure I'm just going to throw in the word Woolworths and you can all share your memories. It's a particular one for that. We also have references to shops within other collections. So for instance, we hold a substantial collection of receipts and invoices and bills in the Pat Lodge collection. Pat Lodge is on Glenstrathfarrar estate near Struy, near Bewley, and it's a large collection of documents, and unusually it's not a full estate collection, but it's a collection almost exclusively of receipts, invoices and bills. It was amassed by Theodore Campbell, who was the estate factor and stocker from 1900 to 1920, and following that he went on to become a postmaster, speaking of things that are relevant at this time of year. And these are often very small pieces of paper, these invoices, bills, receipts, just very little. And they're often beautifully decorated. So unlike most receipts we see now, they often have beautiful letterhead drawings on them, illustrations of the business, as well as containing a huge amount of information. So they will give the name of the business, sometimes the name of the owner, the location, prices. You can get a huge amount of information from a small receipt. And one of the things that I really love about them and about this collection is that it really clearly shows that distinction between the past and the present, in that there are a myriad of individual specialist shops as opposed to the all-encompassing supermarket or department store. So you can find, well, I'll come on and tell you in a second what's there. But for instance, in 1925, Mr. Theodore Campbell needed nuts and bolts and washers. So who did he go to? You know, today we would go to B&Q or to Bunnings, depending on where you are in the world. There will be an equivalent, I'm quite sure, whatever you are. But of course, Mr. Campbell, where did he go? He went to the local blacksmiths, who was shoeing the horses for the estate, because then he could ensure that these nuts, bolts and washers he wanted would be made to his exact specification. And that's quite interesting, I think, that we have come away from a time of bespoke almost, and now we're back to a point where having something made bespoke is a huge luxury, whereas in our past it was the easiest solution. There are invoices, as I mentioned, for a huge range of businesses in this collection. So for instance, James Asher Woolen and Linen Draper, the beautifully named J. Baxter & Co. Drapers, Millinery, Mantles and Dressmaking, which I just think is lovely. there are, and let me just read this out, because as I was looking through the collection I thought what an extraordinary range of businesses for the estate to be buying from. Bootmakers, butchers and fleshers, dealers in flour and meal, carting contractors, tea merchants, hatters, hosiers, wine and spirit merchants, haberdashers, always loved the word haberdashers, box and barrel manufacturers, cycle agents, seedsmen, saddle makers, cigar merchants, a skin dresser, which I assume is leather as opposed to anything more sinister. And there are some odd bedfellows, maybe things that we would think were a little bit strange. A coal merchant and motor hirer in the same business, watchmaker and optician. And I wonder if that watchmaker and optician one is to do with manual dexterity, maybe being able to handle small things. This collection also includes receipts and invoices from businesses much further afield. So for instance, there are businesses in Edinburgh, London, Manchester, Northampton, Birmingham, Hatfield, all represented within this one collection. And this is at the early 1900s, 1900 to 1920. The other resource we can use to clarify or confirm the exact location of these shops are the valuation rules. Now, I've spoken about valuation rules before. Any of you who do family history will be well aware of the many benefits of valuation rule use. They were published annually in Scotland from the 1850s to the 1980s. They detail the proprietor, tenant and occupier of inhabited buildings and what type of building they are. So it will tell you if a building is a shop and who owns it and who is the tenant of it. So just by way of comparison, that first photograph I mentioned of Victorian Market, that's an image of it as it was in 1870. But if we come to, for instance, the 1956 valuation roll of Inverness Borough, I can look at that and see that in that year, number 15 of the new market was occupied by Thomas Craig of Craig Brothers Butchers. 14 to 16 was Aeneas Lawler Fruitier. I'm so sorry, I'm stumbling over my words today. 18 was Isaac Finkelstein Jewellers, as it had been since the turn of the century, and it would be until 1998 when it was taken over by William Morrison Jewellers, who are still on site today. So we can use a mixture of photographs, invoices, bills, valuation rolls, memories, oral histories, all of these different types of archive resource to find out about the shops and the businesses of the past, where they were, when they were there, what sort of stock they were selling, what the prices were, who was going to them. So you can find references to this across a really wide range of collections. So that's about the kind of bricks and mortar, if you like, of a shop. What about the shopping experience, people going to shops and enjoying that? Well, we can find that in various places as well. So again, those oral histories and memories are useful. We also have some fantastic family collections. So we have the Mcfarlane of Bialad collection. Fantastic collection, one of my favourites. I along with my colleague Alistair, catalogued it, so I have an affection for it. It's a lovely collection. And in that there are Christmas shopping lists from the 1940s, just put in with the family papers. And again, something all of us will do, write down the people we're buying for and what we've bought. So for instance, we can know that in 1948, the Mcfarlane family intended to buy Tom a set of marbles, Christopher a bib, Andrew a Ludo set. Grandma was getting a lavender bag, apparently. And even those spark conversations. So when we posted that list on our Facebook page a few days ago, people were commenting about, remember when children were happy to get a set of marbles for Christmas and that was their whole entire gift. So all of those things spark memories as well. There are also references to shopping within our family letters. This is one I am entirely sure I will have shared with you last Christmas, but it's such a nice one that I wanted to share it again. So it is written by a child, Gordon McIntosh. He's writing to his big brother Dennis, who at that point his big brother was aged 18 and was living away from home, and he's asking for help to buy his mum a secret Christmas gift. So he's writing it on Wednesday the 20th of November, so suitably organised child. Dear Dennis, this is just a note to ask you if you will lend me 2 and 6 to help me buy Ma's present. It is a bed lamp which costs 18 and 6. It's a beauty, and it's in Dow's Gramo shop window. Ma gave me a list of things she wanted for her Christmas, and a bed lamp headed that list. I was told by Ma about the writing pads, and I am very pleased to hear that you are managing to get them. Keep this letter a secret, for no one else knows about it. You will also notice the pen I am writing with. See and look after my pen. I am having my term exams tomorrow, so I am very busy. Love from Gordon. NB, send the money quickly. I love many aspects of that letter. I love the fact that it's a secret. I love that bit about, you'll see the pen I'm writing with because I don't have my own pen, so could you look after it, please? It's just a lovely letter, and a child writing to his big brother for help. That collection, actually, it comes from the KJ Mackintosh collection, and it's a really interesting collection with relation to shops. It has references to the difficulties that World War II brought to shops, so shortages of potatoes, increase in the cost of clothing, the cost of cigarettes and stockings. All of those things can be found referenced within letters backwards and forwards between members of the family. And again, it's something we all do. Well, I won't be buying that because you've seen how much the cost of that is. People don't change, really. And that family, the Mackintosh family, ran a business in Inverness. It evolved, talking of businesses that are odd bedfellows, it evolved from being cycle and motor agents in 1920 through to a radio and cycle agents, and then radio and TV dealers by the 1960s. And there are loads of interesting records in that, and I'm not going to go much more into it because I've got a talk on that scheduled for next year. Of course, there are references to shopping within our Baillie of Dineen collection, and anyone who has heard me speak about Baillie of Dineen will not be remotely surprised to hear that. I've yet to find a contemporary subject that they don't discuss in that collection. Hilarious description from the mid-1800s, and again, I possibly have told you this before, but a letter written by a gentleman called Andrew Shortreed, writing to the family in the mid-1800s, describing his opinion of dressmakers' shops and fashion at the time. He describes that the sleeves of the dresses look either like porridge sticks or like legs of mutton. That's what they looked like up until last year, but now apparently the dresses look like inverse potato mashers and strings of onions. And he says the dressmakers' shops and the dressmakers' workshops, they must feel like it's harvest time with all these people coming and shopping. And he says the hat makers, he doesn't have a much better thing to say about the hat makers, to be honest. He accuses them of making women look like ships with skyscraper sails. It's just the most descriptive letter about the things people will buy because it's in fashion or it's what they think they should be wearing. There's an interesting insight too into the market for clothes purchasing in these letters and how the process worked. So there's a letter which is undated, but I think will be again mid-1800s, and it's by a gentleman called James Sharp, and he's writing to Miss Baillie at Dineen House, bidding to supply Mr. Baillie's clothes now that Robert Smith's shop has shut down. So an interesting insight there into a business has closed and someone's jumping into the market and going, well, you're not getting your clothes there anymore, maybe I could supply your clothes for you. An unusual thing from our point of view, I would think, although I don't live in a big estate house, so maybe if you do, please let me know if that still happens. And then of course we also have collections which specifically are about shops and the running of businesses, their stock, their management, their people. These include collections like the Robert Rutherford and Sons of Helmsdale collection. It has a beautiful 1885 shopping stock list, including rubber balls, framed scripture texts, pocket knives, musical tops, all sorts of things. And one of the largest collections that we hold that is specifically around the running of a shop is the Tailors of Menloki collection. But again, I'm not going to talk about that because I have that scheduled in for next year. You'll be glad to hear I have all 52 talks for next year in my diary. Instead, I wanted to round off by telling you about two particular shops, one in Fort William and one in Caithness. So I'm going to start by looking at the collection that we hold in our Lochaber Archive Centre. It's D114 Mcfarlane the Chemists, and the collection dates from 1866 through to 1999. The company was established in Fort William in the 1870s and was run by 3 generations of the Mcfarlane family. And I wanted to share a little bit about each of them. So Peter Mcfarlane was born in 1850. He was the founder of Mcfarlane and Sons the Chemists in Fort William. He was born at Spean Bridge and in 1866 was apprenticed to Alan Affleck, chemist in Fort William, who had established his business in 1852. In 1869 he went to London to work for a wholesale druggist, and then in 1877 he married and returned to Fort William and opened his shop. So in 1878 he rented shops in the high street, so several shops. He rented number 19 and number 39, and then in 1890 he went on to also buy 50 High Street. He went on to buy land behind the town hall in Fort William and establish a mineral water factory there. And in 1896 he went on to become provost of Fort William, and he died in 1925. But by that point his son, George Mcfarlane, had qualified as a chemist. He qualified in 1911, and he had gone to Ceylon to work for Miller & Co. And then for 9 years, he went to work there, for 9 years, and then he returned to Fort William to take over his father's business. And he went on to be involved in selling various shops, selling different aspects of the business. And he also went on to serve as town councillor and provost of Fort William from 1939 to 1945, those key years. And his son, Alexander Malcolm Mcfarlane, also went into the business. He took over the business in 1963, having qualified as a pharmacist in Aberdeen. In 1985, he bought back the premises at 54 to 56, the High Street, and then eventually he sold the business to Lloyd's Pharmacies before dying in Aberdeen in 2011. So you can see there that huge range of time from 1869, when he started to work as a chemist, opened that shop in Fort William in 1878, and then right through to the 1990s, that family ran that chemist shop, which was so integral, as chemist shops always are, to the community. The collection includes a number of different items relating to the running of Mcfarlane's Chemist. There are financial records, so cash books, receipts for the rent of the shops in Fort William High Street. It was £20 for 6 months' rent in 1878. So there you go, you can get all sorts of information from business collections. £20 for 6 months. There are details around the sale of poisons as well. So there are sales books that record who bought the poison, when, and what they were using it for. So often it was for killing vermin, sometimes it's for treating dry rot, or for silvering metal items. I always think you'll know from all the books, although I've moved my office around, but you'll know from all the books that I'm a big crime fiction reader, and I always think when I look at those sales poison books, it's like Mysterious Fairet Styles with that a sale register of who's bought the poison and what have they bought it for. There are correspondence files and orders. There are licenses and legal documents in this. So licenses to sell certain things, licenses to prove, legal documents to prove ownership of the buildings. There are prescription books, adverts, plans, press cuttings. So all the sort of things that you would expect to see in and around a business collection. Things to do with the finances, things to do with the people, things to do with the stock and the running of the business. But one of my favourite things in this collection relates to a project called Midgic. And anyone who has spent any time in Scotland, and particularly the west coast of the Highlands, will be familiar with the problem of midges. Little biting insects that swarm round your head and bite you viciously, and leave you itching and scratching and unable to think or focus. And in the 1940s, Mcfarlane's Chemist developed and manufactured a product to try and tackle these midges, and it was a repellent called Midgic. And this product seems to have been very successful because the collection also contains testimonials. There's a letter from an R. Latham in Monkseaton that just reads, "Thanks for saving our lives." And another one from the same family the following year that says, "Please send by return 3 bottles of Midgic. After experiencing its blessings last year, we would never face camping in the Highlands again without it." But perhaps the greatest testimony of all to Midgic can be found can be found in a collection dating from the 30th of July 1942, and it is a document in which Axel W. Anderson, who was the first lieutenant of the 1st Rangers Battalion, supply officer for the US Army, ordered 570 bottles of Midgic for his troops. So there you go. I don't know if it still exists in any form, but it sounds like it should. And then finally, moving up to Caithness. Earlier this year, the Nucleus team put up a post about Fred Shearer's shops, and it generated such a lot of interest, again, as I mentioned at the start, of people sharing their memories of visiting shops, going shopping, buying things for the first time, being allowed to buy certain things for the first time. And so I wanted to share with you the history of that company as written by my colleagues in Nucleus. John Shearer set up a drapery business in Trail Street, Thurso in 1873, the same year he got married. He was just 24 and had run away from his home in Ulrig at the age of 12. Apparently his stepmother hadn't appreciated his fiddle playing when he should have been tending to the cows, and she broke the fiddle over her knee, and John, deprived of the solace of music, left home to seek a new life in the big town of Thurso. In Thurso, he found a home with a family who had a wholesale retail business in St John's Square. They offered him an apprenticeship where he received excellent training in the retail business and even travelled to London on buying trips. This must have been quite an experience for a teenager from Caithness in the days before the railway reached Thurso, which opened in 1874. It was thought that John's decision to set up his own business was connected to his marrying in the same year, and he set up as a draper in Trail Street in Thurso. In 1892, his son Fred came to work in the business at the age of 12, the same age John had been when he left home. The shop had moved to Rotterdam Street by this time. Fred injected fresh blood into the family enterprise, introducing new ways of promoting trade through sales and advertising. He would distribute hundreds of printed handbills around the area. The new century saw the business expand to Wick. A shop was opened on the Cross Warehouse, in the Cross Warehouse on the site of the old Tolbooth Jail, just opposite the site of the old Market Cross. To accommodate all the business's stock, a second shop was opened on Cliff Street, and in 1920 the business was converted into a company under the name of Fred Shearer Limited. Fred Shearer introduced fashionable clothes displayed in inviting surroundings to the people of Caithness, gaining a countrywide reputation for quality and good service. Fred regularly modernised and extended the shops in Wick and Thurso. He died in 1957, but his progressive policies continued and the shops continued to thrive. With the establishment of the Nuclear Research Station at Dounreay, the Thurso store was extended and refurbished in 1959 to accommodate the resulting growth in trade. The population of Thurso tripled from just over 3,000 to just over 9,000. The business was quick to capitalise, and an advert in the John O'Groat Journal for the opening of the newly completed extension described it as the shopping event of the century. You were invited to the best equipped and most modern store of its kind in Scotland. The modernised shop now boasted a fashion showroom, a lingerie department, household department, knitwear, blouse department, a children's corner where you will find the daintiest and cosiest for bairns and babes, gloves, handbags, nylons, wool, haberdashery, rugs, carpets, and a new man's shop where men from 5 to 85 will find the right clothes for every occasion. In 1968, a man's shop was added to the Wick store at the Cross Warehouse, which also underwent a complete refit. And in the early 1970s, the Cliff store was refitted as well. It specialised in modern menswear. The company celebrated its centenary in 1973, and at that time it had shops in both Wick and Thurso and a staff of nearly 50. The emphasis continued to be on good value and friendly service. And they write, my colleagues finish it by saying, sadly the firm no longer exists, and both the Wick and Thurso sites are occupied by M&Co. But when they shared the story of the shop, they got so many memories that they wanted to share some of them here. So they say, Children loved to go in to see the big teddy, which stood at 4 feet high in the wick shop, which served as an advert for the Bear brand stockings. Lots of people remembering going and giving the teddy on a cuddle on their way into the shop. And the bear now is in Wick Heritage Centre, so that when locals go in and visit it, those memories still exist. Apparently another thing a lot of people used to do was a Harry Worth impression on the corner of the shop. So you can go and have a wee look at that if you're not in the know of what doing a Harry Worth means. So that is just some of the items we have in our collections that talk about shops and shopping and the experience of going into shops. I really hope you have enjoyed finding out some more about that. I could have gone on forever. There are so many different ways that you can research and find out about shops, but I hope you've enjoyed learning about those ones. I hope you can join me next week. Next week I'll be looking at the subject of sending cards and greetings and some of the different letters, postcards and greetings that exist in our collections, which, as you might imagine, is absolutely thousands. So we'll be on for 5 hours next week. Thank you for joining me this week, and a reminder that this series is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. That High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland, and there's no payment or subscription required to take part in these. But if you're able to donate towards our work, then we're very grateful for that, and I will see you next week. Thank you.